Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Joining me today is Sangeetha Gowda. Sangeetha is an actress, writer, and director. She was born in the UK but has spent most of her life in Australia. She is the co-founder of Noah Films, that is New Order Art House Films, an independent film company that is championing the cause of diversity and representation in Australia. Since 2019, several of her films have won awards both locally and internationally, and they have also played at some of the most well-known indie film festivals all over the world. Sangeetha is also the co-founder and editor of Diversity Australia magazine. Now, this again is a digital media outlet that specializes in telling ethnic stories from the Australian society. Considering what I'm trying to do with this podcast, it's a natural overlap of interest to sit down with Sangeetha and share a conversation about what it means to be Australian in the 21st century. With an ever-growing multicultural population, Australia is fast becoming one of the most diverse countries in the world. And in that vein, it is becoming increasingly important to ensure that when we grow, we all grow together. All nationalities, all ethnicities, all cultures, all together. Sangeetha is trying to play her part in this effort by highlighting such portions of our society, and I truly admire the work that she is doing. She and I also talk about the film and acting industry in Australia at present and its current position with regards to representation and accessibility for ethnic artists. As always, I thank all of you guys for your support. If you are new to the podcast, kindly consider subscribing. If you are already subscribed, kindly leave us a comment and a like down below. Your engagement with my videos actually helps this channel grow. Please also check out all of our social media accounts over here, all of our short form content, all of the highlights from this conversation, as well as all of my past conversations are going to be up there. So do check that out. But anyways, without further ado, this is my conversation with Sangeetha Gowda in the Gap. Have you been busy recently with any new projects coming up?
Yeah, well, Red Lantern.
Yep.
Yeah, because we finished filming now, but that's going through festivals and things now. So now it's all that side of thing, like entering it, trying to get articles for it, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But no, it's really exciting. And besides that, I have also been working on a TV show pitch.
Have you?
Yeah, with my partner, Marshall.
What's that?
I can't say too much.
Okay. But what's the premise?
So basically, it's based on our lives.
Yeah.
So it really delves into being a creative in Australia of an ethnic background.
Sure.
And so it's comedy drama as well because
Nice.
a lot of the stories are very hard hitting and raw. So we wanted to put the comedy into it to make it more entertaining and sort of easier to watch as well.
Yeah. Something like a Modern Family, perhaps?
Yeah, kind of, but a little more dark than that. I don't know if you've seen The Bear.
I haven't seen the Bear. The show about the chef.
Yes.
Yeah, I have.
Yes,
I have.
I would sort of compare it a bit to that because they have these really dramatic moments that are really intense and like crazy.
But there's an element of humor in it.
Yeah, there's an element of humor as well. But then they'll sort of cut to a scene that's so quiet and calm and honest. And I really like that balance that they have there. And that's kind of what I'd try to aim for. Or something like Beef. Have you seen Beef?
No, I haven't seen Beef.
Very good show.
I saw recommendations for it. That's Ali Wong, isn't it?
Yes, and
Yes.
Stephen Ewan.
Yeah.
Very good show.
Is it?
It's excellent. Yeah.
What's the premise there?
So basically two people get into a road rage incident.
Yeah.
One is from like a very wealthy family, which is Ali.
Yeah.
And then Stephen is from the opposite spectre.
Okay.
So he's very like from a poor family,
Poor
really
family.
struggling.
Yeah.
And basically they get into this road rage incident and they get throughout the series, they try to one up each other. Like they're trying to get back at each other constantly.
Yeah, okay.
And it gets worse and worse and worse every episode.
This one.
Yeah.
I might actually check that. That's on Netflix, I believe.
Netflix.
Yeah. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. Right. So, first off, Sangeetha, again, pardon my ignorance, how do I pronounce your last name? I had a few versions of it. Is it Gowda? Is it Gouda? Is it
So the way we say is Gowda.
Gowda?
But I believe the proper pronunciation is you would have to ask my dad.
Yeah.
But I believe it's more like Gowda.
Gowda.
So it's kind of, it's not Gouda,
Yeah.
but it's not Gowda.
Yeah.
It's like an in-between.
Gouda.
Gouda.
Because I have to record an
Yeah.
intro at the end
Yeah.
of that. How do I introduce you?
So I think it's Gouda.
Gouda.
Yeah.
Gowda. Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously, lots to unpack in the conversation. Right. There are multitudes of things that we have to discuss, but I always tend to start from the start because I try to get a good footing of where a person is coming from. What their background is. So that gives a lot, that contextualizes everything that they're doing in life. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe just start us off with who Sangeetha is, coming up in Australia as an ethnic kid. Tell us something about that.
Yeah. So, well, I was born in London. That's where my parents actually met.
Yep.
So they came here when I was 2, and then I grew up in Brisbane for most of my life.
Sure.
In North Brisbane. And yeah, that was... I always say I'm a Queenslander, even though I've been here for like 7 years now.
Sure.
Because, I grew up there for most of my life, and I was born into a mixed race family.
Sure.
So my dad is South Indian, my mum is British Australian, and I have 4 siblings.
Okay.
So it was a very big family, very chaotic. I'm the middle child.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of have that.
Yeah.
Like I'm the quietest of like the family.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting growing up because in primary school I went to a very diverse primary school. So there was a lot of different cultures. Race was never anything.
Yep.
You're just a kid.
Yep.
I'm a kid.
Sure.
But then I went to high school and that was quite a different story. So my primary school was a public school nearby. My high school was a private school and it was mostly Caucasian.
Okay.
So it was a very different experience and that's sort of where I started to realize that I was different.
Yep.
And culture came into it, a bit of casual racism. And yeah, that's where I sort of began to have more identity issues, I guess. Because in my family, there's no issues there because it's just your family. But it's always, especially as a mixed person, the issues never come from your family, they come from outside.
Yeah, of course.
And the way others view you.
Yep.
So I can see myself as something, which is what I am. But then I was faced with all these different sort of assumptions about me and like different comments and things. And I sort of faced a lot of struggle when it came to high school.
Yeah, I feel like growing up, like yourself in a mixed family, right? I think it's not until we get a little towards our preteens that we actually start realizing, the ethnicity of it. Because growing up, our parents tend to usually shield us from a lot of that anyway. And when you're growing up, kids don't...
They don't think about it.
Kids don't see race anyway.
Yeah, no, they don't.
They don't think about it. So what was that point for you? Was that when you went to that high school? Is that when you realized that okay, there is a difference there?
Yeah. I think it was definitely high school because there was just so much less races because primary school, like I said, was so diverse. Like all my friends were different cultures.
Yep.
But then high school, like there was like 300 kids in my grade, but only 30 of us were ethnic.
Okay.
And of those 30 kids, we were all mixed race.
Sure.
Pretty much.
Sure.
So, and then in my friend group, I was the only ethnic person. And like, it was a great school. Like that's where I got my passion for film because they had a lot of great classes. But yeah, the identity thing was there. Like I would often see as well some of the fully ethnic kids in other groups. Yeah. I would observe them allowing themselves to be the butt of the joke sometimes just to fit in.
Okay.
And so I'd see instances like that. And I was also not a very vocal kid in high school. So if someone was to no one really was outwardly racist to me. It was more like comments and things. Yep. But if someone was to say something, I wouldn't really say anything back because I was kind of quiet. I mean, now I would. No way you'd say that. But back then it was just sort of navigating who am I, what's my identity, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I believe around that time, like when you would have been in high school, I think the talks around diversity and ethnicity weren't really that loud at the time.
No, and something I've noticed too is that where I live, especially right now, there's a lot of mixed race families. Yep. I see people with my mix with little kids all the time. It's so common.
Sure.
But back then, I was the only one. It's like, didn't exist. I mean, ethnicity, representation didn't exist. And so if that conversation itself doesn't exist, where does the mixed race conversation fit in? Because even that's still an issue now that I find.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So in terms of like your family life, what was it like growing up in a mixed household? Like is it like you guys celebrate Christmas and Diwali together or something like that?
So very chaotic.
Very chaotic.
A lot of arguments.
Was it?
But I think it was just because there was so many different personalities in the house and we all are a bit we've all got very strong personalities.
Okay.
So my father, when we were growing up, was also Christian.
Okay.
So when he met my mother, he converted, because she's a Christian, he converted to being a Christian.
Sure.
And so we celebrated Christmas and went to church and things like that. But as I went into high school, I think my dad, he kind of wanted to convert back to Hinduism personally.
Sure.
So the rest of us were all Christian, but it was through high school that he sort of started being more open with his culture and things like that. Like he's always been very, very proud. Like well, Bollywood movies all the time.
Sure.
Like I had favorite Bollywood movies as a kid and like we ate Indian food every single day. Like so I feel like there was quite a good balance between the two cultures growing up. And so I'm really thankful for that, because I feel like now I've always actually had an appreciation of both cultures. It's never been one more than the other. And I've never wanted to be one more than the other. I've always only wanted to be seen as both.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that is more important because, like you said, like towards your high school time, your father started appreciating his culture a lot more. I guess that is also around the time when those conversations start coming back up, that culture and your background is something that you need to celebrate rather than... Because you see this all the time, like especially with people with Asian heritage, they tend to change their names or they tend to change, you know, their identity based on just for the ability to fit in, just to have an upper leg, you know, in terms of jobs and stuff. But now the conversation has kind of turned around and now people are celebrating their identity more often.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, it really helps being in an environment that's got a lot of cultures, because my high school, like I said, was very Caucasian. And because of that, the Indian side of me was pointed out a lot. And because I was trying to figure out who I was, I kind of got annoyed by that. And I also didn't have a very close connection to my dad at that point. So in many ways, I didn't want to push it away, but I wanted to prove I'm also this. I'm not just that, I'm also this. But when I got to Sydney was when I really started to truly find my identity, because there's so many cultures here. And I was surprised, like even the Caucasian people here are not just one thing, they're different things as well. And so I think the environment definitely helps as well.
Have you guys ever been back to India for a visit?
Yes, so when I was 11, my auntie had her wedding. And so we all went as a family to India, and that was like massive culture shock in a way. I felt very white when I went there. But no, it was a very overwhelming but a very good experience, because all my Indian family don't live here as well. So getting to go there and meet my grandparents and my auntie and all of them was a really good experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, you were only 11, but that would have exposed, I think, a side of your heritage to you that, okay, this is what I've known my entire life, but then this is also a huge chunk of, you know, where I come from, or like where your father comes from. And that now you would realize that, especially in the art scene, that would have a huge impact on what you create.
Definitely.
Do you feel that your heritage or your culture has any kind of impact on the way you create art?
Yeah, definitely. I think having these two cultures coming together is what really makes my work different, I guess, because I have grown up in two different cultures and I'm able to intertwine them in a way. And I think that's also why, to me, representation that includes every kind of different race is so important in my work. So, you know, I see a lot of groups that are representing different cultures, but it's like one culture. It's not sort of everyone. And I know that's like a big goal to say, oh, let's include everyone. But I feel like in a way, I'm kind of like a poster child in a way for two cultures coming together. So for me, it's so important. And my parents always raised me to respect people regardless of what background they are. And so definitely in my work, it's important to be featuring people of all different races and backgrounds.
So, okay, so tell me, once you graduated high school, right? How did that interest in going for the arts come about? Were you always interested in art, or was it something you picked up?
I realized I always was interested in it from a young age, but I never saw it as a serious thing until high school. So they had film classes in my high school, and that's when I really learned about film, actually, before I even did acting properly. And I just gained an appreciation of it. And I think also my dad did have a lot to play with that because he loves films, like always watching movies. Like his kind of films are not the same as the ones I like. He loves action and like things like that.
And predominantly Bollywood?
He's very into South Indian cinema now. He's a very proud South Indian.
Tollywood.
So he's from the state of Karnataka. So there's a lot of like Kannada kind of films coming out now. But yeah, he's always been into films. He actually wanted to be an actor when he was a child.
Interesting.
Yes. And he tells me about, I think that's really fascinating. But yeah, I sort of learned a lot about film in high school. And then I just realized, I guess also because high school was a very challenging time for me mentally. And it was film that sort of got me out of that. And made me feel, okay, this is what I really like to do. And I'd like to do it as a career. And so that has kind of been my mission. And in grade 11 was when I started to do drama for the first time. And being really shy, the first time I did a scene, I felt the opposite. Like I was like, why do I feel so confident on the stage? And I got a really good mark and I was like, okay, I think this is it then.
I have a theory on that, right? So I have a little bit of an overlap. I'm a middle child as well.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like always the attention seeker constantly. And I've also like loved being on stage all through high school, through primary school, even during university and everything. Like even now I try to keep that thespian side of me alive to some extent, whatever I can. Even this is just a way of acting out that itch, just to scratch that itch. What I've found is that when you're a middle child, right, you have a lot of identity crisis in itself, irrespective of what your ethnicity is, because you're always trying to find your own place between the siblings, right? You're not the eldest one, you're not the youngest one, you're somewhere in between. And being on stage kind of provides it more than anything. I'd say it's escapism for me personally, like to have the ability to just get up on stage, and for those 15-20 minutes when you're up on stage, you have absolute license to do anything you want.
Exactly.
And you have absolute license to express yourself any way that you want. You can literally step into the shoes of a completely different person and express yourself that way. And that for me has always been very intoxicating about the stage. Okay, so high school, and so then you decide that you want to pursue film or acting as a career. What did your parents have to say about that? Because acting is not the safest bet.
No, it's
not. That you say you usually get to hear stuff like, you'll never be able to hold down a stable job. What are you going to do with yourself? We're always going to be worried about you. Why can't you just be a doctor?
Well, interestingly enough, so my parents, they were both very supportive.
Okay.
So the thing about my parents, they had their own differences and things growing up, but the one thing that was like the same for them was teaching us that we could achieve anything and to always dream big, very, very big.
Sure.
So me wanting to do acting was not weird for them.
Okay.
And if you know the rest of my siblings as well, you'll know they all sort of went on similar paths. Like
they're all creatives?
Yeah. Weirdos or industries that are hard, like fashion.
Okay.
My older sister's in fashion.
Wow.
But yeah, always we'd grown up with that mindset, aim big, very big, and don't settle, like always go for that. So they were very supportive. It was more my mum's side of the family. So her mum, like that.
Your grandma.
Yeah. So my grandma, so they, the thing about what she was so frustrated about with me was that I was very good at English and I was very good at writing and literature, that sort of thing. So she thought I would go into something like that after high school. And I said, no, I'm going to go study acting in Sydney. And she was just very disappointed. But the way I kind of pitched it to her was that, because it was going to be a 1-year acting course, I said, look, this is basically a gap year. So just treat it like a gap year, and after that, I'll do the serious thing. And she was like, okay.
And
that didn't happen.
That's it. Famous last words.
But no, and so yeah, my parents were really supportive. The only thing was like after I was in college, my dad was kind of, Indian dad a bit like, have you made your money yet? That's always sort of been the pressure. He's been supportive always, but it's always been, how come you're not in a big movie yet? Like, because that's how it works, you know? You just go to acting college and get to a big movie.
It reminds me of that scene from Family Guy, the Asian guy, he comes into the door. You doctor yet?
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me when you're doctor.
Yeah, so it's very much been like that.
Yeah.
And this journey has taken me longer than I thought it would, to be honest with you, which also has its struggles.
How long has it been?
So I would say, so straight after high school, I did a 2-year acting course. Since then, it's been about 6 years, I think 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I think when you want to do acting, you set goals for yourself and you're like, you know, by 20, I'm going to be doing this.
Sure.
25, I'm going to be doing that.
Sure.
But it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah. So after high school, you came to Sydney, right? For your acting degree.
So my dad did get a job here anyway. So the family was already going to be moving.
Okay, that's convenient.
Which was, really convenient. But yeah, I definitely wanted to do acting, so it's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just like for me, as somebody who has absolutely no idea of how the industry operates in Sydney or in Australia, like give me just a primer of how is the industry set up? How does somebody coming from Brisbane, like yourself, wanting to be an actor, how does somebody go about doing that?
Yeah, so there's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will be like, go to acting school and then you get an agent and then you do some extra gigs and you kind of work your way up.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
But there's so many different avenues. Some people don't go to acting school and they just look for independent film productions to get experience. But a lot of the industry is about who you know and being recognized, I guess. So the more people know your name, the more inclined you'll be to get into things. So it can be a bit political at times as well.
Yeah. And that politicalness, I suppose, is where the gatekeeping comes in.
Yes.
It doesn't. I had this occurred during the conversation with Almitra as well. She said that there is a lot of talk in the industry about inclusiveness and diversity and, you know, having a fair go for everyone. Yeah. But in reality, when you get down to it, it's not being practiced in spirit as much so that those are just words being thrown around.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do agree. Like, from the way the industry is now compared to when I started in college is very different. Like, there's a lot more opportunities now compared to back then. There was like nothing.
Yep.
But even so, I do agree that now this word diversity has become like a quota. Like it's become like a trend.
Yeah.
So, you know, the studios and productions know, we've got to have diversity. So let me find somebody I can tick the box and we've got it. And then in doing that, it's not really doing what we want, which is opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing, that we want opportunity to audition for something from a different race and be able to have that opportunity. Yep. But now it's like, I want an Indian person. I want an African person in this.
Yeah.
Who's African? Just throw them in.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of trivializes the person that you're trying to cast, right? Because even within Indians, North Indians are very different to South Indians. You know, we're not the same people.
Exactly, yeah.
We're not the same people.
Yeah.
You go to somebody from like my neck of the woods, like in Pakistan, right? Like people in the north, the Pathans, the Pashtun people, like they're completely different to people like I come from the south of Pakistan. We're completely different, right? So you can't trivialize all South Asians or all Africans, for example, into one box.
Even just saying just African or Indian.
Africa is not a country.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. No. And like it's definitely has improved, but I think in saying that, it is, like we said, it's very surface level, and it's like, who are the people making the decisions? Who are the people writing the roles? Because you can have an South Indian character, but who wrote that character? Is it going to be authentic as well?
The words on the paper have to come from somebody who has at least some kind of notion of what it means to be South Asian, for example. Like, you can't just have a token South Asian person in your cast. It has to be authentic.
Yeah.
And again, this was part of the conversation with Almitra as well, that why can't we have shows or movies or productions that have ethnic people in them, but the storyline or the plot has nothing to do with their ethnicity.
Yeah.
You know, like why can't we just have a rom-com or even like a crime drama, a thriller or something that just happens to have ethnic people in it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. And I don't know if you know about Heartbreak High.
No, I don't.
So that came out on Netflix recently from Australia,
Okay.
Australian production, and they did that.
Okay.
It was the first show that they had a very diverse ethnic Australian cast, and their ethnicities weren't like their main feature. They were just people.
They were just people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that happening with a lot of now streaming shows as well. Like even if you've seen Bridgerton.
I love Bridgerton.
Yeah. My missus loves Bridgerton as well. I like the soundtracks.
Yeah, they're good.
They're really good. Like the covers. I really love those. But yeah, with Bridgerton, especially with the last season, I believe they brought the South Asian actress to the forefront as well as the romantic lead in there. So I thought that was a step in the positive direction. And the same thing, like if you've seen Sex Education, the latest seasons, right, or throughout that entire season, what I loved about it is that it's a high school setting, but you've got all kinds of ethnicities in there, and their ethnicities don't really matter in the scheme of the whole show.
Yeah.
So I absolutely loved that about the show.
And the thing about Bridgerton, which I really did love as well, is they did showcase a South Indian family. Like they were kind of specific about the actors' backgrounds, I guess. And I was like, that's really nice to see. Like they actually did the research and stuff.
Yes.
And I think what also I liked about it was, yes, they were just a character. Their race didn't really matter. But at the same time, they did add little instances of the culture.
Yes.
Because sometimes I do find like it's really this balance of like you want a character that's not stereotyped, but you don't want to completely get rid of their heritage completely because that is a part of you at the end of the day. And so they really balance that really well, I think.
And I to be fair, it is a tricky balance.
Yeah, it is tricky.
It is a tricky balance.
Yeah.
Like you want to highlight that culture, but you don't want to make it the forefront piece.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So within the Australian industry, do you see things moving in the same kind of direction with inclusivity and diversity?
Yeah, I think it's getting there. I think streaming services are getting there much faster than network TV.
Yep.
Network TV is still very behind here, like things like Neighbours and things. But I mean, in a way, I kind of understand it because who's their target audience in a way?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not watching
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's...
Like, I feel like a lot of the younger generations, like ourselves, are kind of watching streaming services. And so they are getting there. And because streaming services are networks that kind of operate worldwide, like across America and UK, they kind of have different requirements that they're introducing.
Yep.
So you can't really have an Australian show that's going to be on Netflix that's not diverse now.
Yep.
There's kind of things you have to include now.
Yeah. With that, I also believe, like you said, first point is that the streaming services are doing that a lot faster because they're a lot more sensitive to the people's reception. And they have the capability to adjust themselves much faster than network television. They don't have to wait for the ratings as such. Second point, target audience, obviously. I've been in Australia 6 years. I do not think I've ever watched mainstream TV at all. I don't even know what Australian mainstream TV is like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's a generational thing as well. Like their target audience is just somebody who is used to it. I guess they don't want to disrupt that because it's also an economics model, right? Because with mainstream TV, it's a way that they have to satisfy their audience in order to get the funding from the sponsors, whereas that doesn't really apply to streaming services as such. Yeah. And another point would be that if there's an Australian show, right, on a streaming service, it's if it hits off, it's probably going to be watched all over the world.
Yes, exactly.
So it has to have the capability to be relatable to, let's say, if it has an Afro person in the show, it has to have the ability to be relatable to a person watching it in some other part of the world, in the US as well, or the UK. So the diversity has to be there. Okay, so you are now past high school, you've moved to Sydney with your family, you've done your degree. So once you're done with acting school, how, like those 6 years, I'm sure, like you said, that it did not go off to the best start or did not start off the way that you thought it would.
Not the way that I thought.
Yeah. So in that, there would have been moments of demoralization. There would have been moments of imposter syndrome.
Definitely.
There would have been moments of, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
Tell me something about that. How did that go?
Well, I think the the representation thing was a very big part of my doubt because, I mean, yeah, I sort of faced comments and things in high school, but when you get into the acting industry, all of your jobs, it's like, imagine you have a CV for a job, any job, but the number one thing they're looking for is what you look like. So you're listing your ethnicity on the top of the resume, and that's the number one thing that they're looking at. And that's what was so hard for me, is because as a mixed race person who doesn't really pass by those standards, it was like, oh, you're an ethnic one. Okay. so even my first, I graduated my first year of acting school. I was awarded a Best Actor award for my year for like my hard work and like my performance and things. And I was like, oh, great, and then I got my first agent meeting and I was like, oh, it's going pretty good so far.
Things are picking up.
I know. I get into the meeting and this agent was a little blunt, I guess, but I mean, a lot of the industry is like that. And she was like, oh, yes, I would love to have you in our books. So now that whenever there's an Indian role, I can just send you out. And that was like my first taste of like, wait, is this the industry I'm stepping into? You realize that this might be something that's entrenched in the industry, and it's casual, like they pass it off as something that's not really. It's like it's normal.
It's normal.
And that was my main frustration, was because if there was, say, a Caucasian actor at that time, if they had gone into the meeting and be like, oh, what kind of personality do you suit? Like, are you the bad guy? Are you like the nice, nerdy guy? Like, I know those are stereotypes too, but at least they're not based on your race. Like, what is an Indian role?
You're just an Indian.
I was like, wait, what's an Indian role?
You're just an Indian. You're either one of the group of friends in the back, or you're the comic relief.
Exactly.
Or you're like the ethnicity token character.
And then there was also the thing of like, can you do an accent? And like, I mean, that comes with two sides to it, because there's a lot of ethnic people here who have Australian accents. And there's also, when they ask you to do the accent, they're not saying a normal South Asian accent. They want it to be like Apu from The Simpsons. So that was one of the main things that very much frustrated me, because I didn't feel like I was being seen for my talent and what skills do I have. It was like all about what you look like. And that's it. Like
it all reduces down to your heritage and not what you bring talent-wise to the table.
So in a way, I almost felt like, what was the point of going to acting school? Like, I spent 2 years like working my technique and stuff. And it wasn't just that, it was also at that time, roles for women were not very good either. Even in independent productions, that's kind of where I sort of got more of my start into the industry after graduating.
This was prior to the Me Too movement.
Yes, it was. That changed a lot, which was great. But it was like a female role was like the girlfriend, or like the supporting
best
damsel
friend
in distress, or like the best friend who's a bit provocative and like. I don't know if I want to play these parts. Like, that's not why I got into the industry. And it was those struggles that made me want to create my own work.
So, I suppose, because if you hear your agent or any recruiter or any casting agent say something like that, that in there just puts kind of like a full stop to your aspirations, right? That, okay, you can be these set of characters, but maybe you can never be the lead.
Yes. Exactly.
Like a person like Sangeetha or any other Sangeetha out there cannot aspire to be the lead female role in a movie or a show if you don't set a precedence for that. If there is no avenue for a lead ethnic role, how can you expect somebody who is wildly talented to actually go and fulfill that talent?
Exactly.
So, okay, once that realization kicked in, before all of that, there's a very real issue with, obviously you have to support yourself. You have to earn a livelihood. Now, you don't want to do those ethnic stereotype roles, but at the same time, you have to survive. And that is a very difficult decision to make, because just to make your ends meet, you don't want to fill up your CV with stereotypical roles. But that ends up happening. And after a little while, what happens is if you've landed 3 roles of the same kind, that's it. Like you've shut
You're
yourself,
typecast.
you're typecast. You've shut yourself off to any new opportunities. How does an ethnic artist find that kind of balance? Like you want to do the projects that you want to do, but you still have to make a living.
It's a very, very hard decision
Yeah.
to make. And for myself, I sacrificed a lot in terms of saying no to things because of that reason, even though I might have gotten something from it, and like kind of relying on all these side hustle jobs in order to sustain me. But that's a very hard decision to make because you want to act.
Yep.
And you know, you can't just say no. You can't just say no to work all the time. And so I think it's just a very, thankfully the industry is changing, and it's changed a lot since I started.
Sure.
But I think it's just making sure if you are taking those roles because you kind of have to, just making sure that you're also finding roles maybe in the independent circuit where there's more of them that are more deep at the same time. Like not just taking the role and then doing nothing else.
Yep.
Like I think you've got to be proactive that you're taking these other roles or finding these other roles or creating them that are showcasing you in a different light so that the industry won't just see you in that one thing if you are going to take those roles. Yeah.
I remember reading this interview of Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he obviously was typecast. The hell out of typecasting, right?
Yeah.
So he said that he was a young actor trying to make it out in New York, and all the roles that he would get were just elves or just comedic roles or something like that. And he made a decision consciously that he stopped taking all those roles.
Yeah.
He said, I'll go 1 year without any job.
Yeah.
I'll starve if I have to, but I will not. The only next role that I will do is the one that I want to do that has some kind of emotional depth to it.
Yes, definitely.
And as artist, I mean, that was Peter Dinklage. He's one of maybe a million other people who failed where he succeeded.
Yeah.
And those are the stories that you don't hear about.
Yeah.
And the same applies to ethnic artists. So, yeah, it's a tricky situation to be in.
It's very, very tricky.
It's a very tricky
it's hard
situation.
too because if you have an agent, they're often, if you can't, there's this thing with agents where like they'll submit you for things, whatever you're kind of fitting.
Yep.
If you keep saying no to the roles that they send you out for, they'll stop sending you out.
Yeah, because they start thinking that they're just being difficult or too picky.
Understandably.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hard. It's like you want to morally say no. But
yeah, it's
very
just
hard
like at what point do you sell your soul?
yeah. Basically.
How long can you resist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, now I understand where you're at with the industry, your frustration and everything. Now, where does the idea come in to, try to make a difference there?
Yeah. So I've always had a writing background since I was a kid.
Sure.
So I would say I've been writing longer than I've been doing anything else. And in high school, when I was getting into film, I started writing my own screenplays and things like that.
Yep.
And so after college, I also met my partner, Marshall, who's an actor, and he's of Chinese Australian background. So facing the same struggles.
Yep.
And we kind of both made a decision. I was working on a film at the time with a friend of mine. And I'd written it, I was going to direct it. It was basically a film made into 3 parts, and there was 3 of us going to do each part of the film.
Direct it.
So direct and write each part of the film, like an intertwining film.
Okay, yeah.
And so I'd written the script, I'd cast my actors, and then I'm not sure what happened on their end, but it kind of fell through with them. And I was like, I really want to do it. And so Marshall was like, well, I'll film it. Like he didn't have he had experience making short clips as an actor. So he was already kind of creating as well. And we were like, okay, why don't we just make it as a short film? So we both worked on that film. It was called Lost Focus.
Okay.
And
I saw that last night.
Yes.
I saw that last night.
It did quite well at festivals. And it was that project that kind of was the catalyst for creating our own company and our own work. Because we were like, okay, here's something we created with no budget, and it's gone on to do well at festivals, and people are kind of getting to know us a bit now.
Yes.
And we were like, well, we love to act. We have these roles, this idea for roles that we want to do, but we're not getting that from the industry. So I'm a writer. Marshall was good at the film side of things.
Yes.
We were like, let's just collaborate.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice one. So about Lost Focus, I saw that last night. Very well done, by the way.
you.
Like that was your first directorial effort, wasn't it? Yeah, it was very well done, and it was very nuanced. I felt. So that went on to do a few festivals.
Yeah.
Right, and that is where you guys got that confidence.
Momentum,
And like was Lost Focus done as part of Noah Films, or Noah Films came after? After.
So we did put Noah Films, the company, on it after it was created.
Yes.
But technically Noah Films was after that film.
Because at that time, like, it wasn't really a thing. It wasn't a formal thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So while we're on that topic of festivals, like, does the Australian indie film industry have a lot of festivals going on? Is there a lot of avenues for independent artists out there?
I think there's more now.
Yeah.
Back then it was not so much. Like, they have this sort of big festivals all over the country.
Yep.
But not so many like true independent festivals. There's a few more now.
What do you mean by true independent?
So I mean, like, true independent, I mean ones that really support independent filmmakers who are working with maybe no budgets, are new, people don't know them.
Yep.
I would say there's not as many of those. Maybe there's a few now, but not as many.
What about South by Southwest?
That's a very big one now.
That is.
Yeah.
But like, obviously the American one, but
Yes.
the version that's taking place in the Australian version.
I attended it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you find it? Was it the first one that
The first
happened?
one Sydney's had.
Okay.
Yeah. It was quite different to what I imagined. So my idea of South by Southwest was back when I was 16. I knew about it.
Yes.
And it was known as like a festival that supports independent filmmakers and really helps them. But
That's my understanding.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if they did it differently this year or if it's just changed progressively since then.
Yep.
But a lot of the films were, again, it was like they had funding or production companies on board and things like that. And it was also, the festival itself was not just film, it was also music, games, technology.
Yep.
So it was split into a lot of different parts.
Yes.
It had different talks and things.
Sure.
So I feel like the film side of it wasn't as highlighted as I imagined it would be.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even, okay, so the films was only one part of the festival, and even within that you have those ones that are being financed.
Yes.
So independent films kind of get sidelined, I guess.
Yeah.
In that case.
Yeah.
Right. So when I think about the Australian film industry or the media industry, I can name Australian artists or actors that I know of that have made big names in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
What I don't see is the great Australian film. Like, if you ask me to recall one great Australian film that everybody knows of, I don't think I can name one. I can name Taika Waititi from New Zealand.
Yes.
As the director, but beyond that, I don't think I can name anyone. Why do you think that is?
It's funny because we talked about this in acting college too.
Yeah.
One of our teachers said, name 5 of your favorite films. And then he said, name 5 Australian films. And nobody could name 5.
Yes.
Because there was the sense that people don't watch a lot of Australian content here. They're watching US stuff or UK stuff. And I think we are a much smaller industry here, but for me, I think it's also that sense of like a lot of Australian stuff is like on network TV.
Yep.
And it's catered to a certain audience.
Yeah.
Certain people are in it. Someone like me doesn't want to watch that.
Sure.
It's like, I want to watch something with people who look like me and relates to me. And so again, the industry is changing, but I feel like it needs to open up here more in order to reach bigger audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I personally find, my take on it, as a complete outsider looking in, right? My take is that because the Australian pop culture in itself is so highly influenced by the US,
Yes.
Australia has struggled to find its own independent voice for the longest time.
Yeah.
And that's not just in movies. That's also like in TV shows or music or, in pop culture itself. Like if I ask you to define Australian pop culture, it's just somewhat a mirror image of what the American pop culture is, right?
Yeah.
And my understanding for that is that the reason for that, I believe, is indigenous voices from Australia. They could be ethnic, they could be indigenous, they could be mixed race. They aren't really allowed to come to the forefront as such.
Yeah.
And unless you allow your indigenous voices to come to the forefront, you cannot have an authentic Australian story being told in the most authentic Australian way.
Yeah.
if everybody is just trying to use the Australian media industry as a stepping stone to break into Hollywood, there's no point.
No.
Because isn't it, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that all Australian actors, the ultimate goal for everyone is to make it to Hollywood.
It is, yeah.
You know?
Some of them even don't get anything here, so they just go straight there.
They just go to LA
Yeah.
and try to make something out of there.
Yeah.
So I think, the authentic Australian voices, I think, need an outlet somehow, some way.
Yeah, they do.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So okay, so that is where now you come up with the idea of No Films. So the ethos behind No Films then is was it just to create work that you wanted, or is it specifically that you guys wanted to focus on the ethnic part of it?
Yeah, so it was to create work for ourselves and other people to give them the more opportunities. But it was to give more opportunities to people like us of different ethnic backgrounds.
Yep.
To have the opportunity to audition to work with us on a film.
Yep.
And to reflect that on each project we make. So in each project we make, we're making sure that anyone was able to audition and that we're reflecting what Australia looks like. Like when you walk down the street in Sydney, does it look like that? Like that's what we're trying to do. But as you said earlier, that we're not trying to make their ethnicity a feature. So we did a web series called Social Murderer.
Yep.
And the whole main cast were different backgrounds.
Okay.
All had Australian accents.
Yep.
And they were just people.
Yeah.
They were just people. And that's what I loved about it. And I think, again, that's the goal for Australian TV and Australian film. Yeah.
I suppose, if you bring about true representation in terms of the demographics of the country, I doubt it would be recognizable to what the TV or the industry is at the moment. It would be very different.
Very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that is, I understand that is where No Films comes in.
Yeah.
So where does DAM come in?
Yes. So Diversity Australia magazine. So when we created No Films, it was to give, like we said, to give opportunity to other people in the film industry and to ourselves to act more, because we love acting.
Sure.
We have dream roles and we wanted to do that.
Yep.
Diversity Australia magazine, we wanted to create a space that was not about ourselves because the industry as a whole, like, it's not just, I feel like what's reflected on TV is the way people assume Australia is.
Yes.
Whoever's watching it. If an American watches an Australian TV show, they go, okay, that's Australia? All right, cool. Then they'll meet someone like us, they're like, you're Australian? Are you
Doesn't
sure?
make sense.
So, yeah, I didn't feel like there was a platform, like a magazine type online platform that was showcasing Australians of all backgrounds and cultures and telling their stories and giving them a space to talk openly.
Sure.
And so we wanted to create that and have it not be about ourselves.
Yep.
So like we don't really feature ourselves on it. We just wanted it to be a place to give back as well. And that's been very fulfilling for me.
Yep.
Because, you know, you can be doing something I realize through my film work is I could win awards for things and it's very exciting, but it's not lasting. You know, I wanted to do something that was going to be lasting and make me feel like I'm doing something that's important and it's giving back to other people. It's not about me. And just showcasing that Australians look all different and they're from different places and they're still Australian and they still call Australia home.
Yeah. And that's the feel that I got. I'll definitely be posting a link of DM and all their work that they've been doing over here. But what I found with Diversity Australia magazine, that one, the fact that I really liked, you did not make it just about actors or acting or film.
Yeah.
It's about society as a whole. So that is really important, and showcasing all of these different stories from Australia, that this is also Australia. This is also another aspect of Australia.
Yeah.
I think that is very important.
Yeah.
So how long have you been running DM for?
So just under 2 years now.
Yes.
Yeah. And the past year we've been a lot more productive with it. So we've been interviewing a lot more people and it's been really good. And what I really love about it too, being from different industries, the people we interview, I get to learn about different industries too.
Yes.
And what's interesting is some of the stories that we have, although we're from different industries, are relatable to all of us.
The struggles are the same.
The struggles are the same.
Yeah. Okay. So what's kind of like the future vision that you have for DM in that sense?
Well, ultimately, like, you know, I'm hustling with my film work as well, but when I get to a point where I'm doing quite well, which I believe I will, I would love for the magazine to be something like, you know, Hollywood Reporter
Yes.
and Variety.
Yes.
That's like a goal
Okay.
for me. I would love for it to get to that point where I've got a whole team working with me, and it can just be this amazing magazine out of Australia.
Yes.
That's just a great platform for people.
For society, basically a reflection of society.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, that's the ultimate vision that you're working towards.
Yeah.
So right now is DM basically just on digital, or do you have print media as well?
So it's all on digital at the moment. So it's all online on our website, and we do Instagram kind of posts and things too.
Yep.
But yeah, like I said, in the future, I would love to even have a printout, like a printed out with all the stories in there, and kind of have that.
Yes, interesting. And what about Noah Films? What's the vision there?
Very big too.
Do you guys want to be the production house behind an Academy Award winning best feature film?
Probably, yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, honestly, yeah. Like the other thing about Noah Films, which is why it's so important to me too, is beyond like just being reflective of what Australia looks like and the world looks like and having that unity. We really want to be telling stories that are entertaining but bring hope and light to the world as well, because I feel like, you know, we've gone into the stage of films where it's very reflective of true life and all the struggles and things, and that's important to show.
Yep.
But I feel like now there's like no hope in a lot of the things that are on TV now. And I remember as a kid, some of the shows, you know, and movies I used to watch, they were a bit cringy, but they had great triumphant messages in them.
Yes.
And they made you feel excited.
Yes.
And we'd love to bring that back through our content too.
Yeah. With a lot of the recent ones, it's more about doom and gloom and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Or it's either gory violence in most of the shows.
Yeah.
I've recently been watching Invincible on Prime.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, like if you watched The Boys, or if you watched you watch Gen V, like it's graphic to the point that you think why unnecessary violence just pumped into it. But good on you guys. So any new exciting projects that people should watch out for from Noah?
Yeah, well, our film Red Lantern is going through festivals now.
Sure.
That was our first government-funded film.
Okay.
So that was earlier in the year. There was an initiative, and we were one of 5 teams selected to make the film. And so that's an exciting step for us. But yeah, so Red Lantern, as you know, Almitra was in it. So it's really like a homage to artists, and particularly artists who come from different ethnic backgrounds and have the pressure of immigrant parents who don't get it. And so it follows an actor who's called Alex, and he's on his finale night of a play that he's self-financed, and he's just had it. He's reached a point in his life because no one's showing up to the show as well. He's put everything into this. His dad won't watch it. His immigrant dad just doesn't approve, and he's like, what am I doing this for? I think I don't want to do this anymore. And basically what we're kind of trying to do through the film is pay homage to those artists, like the struggle they go through, but also inspire them to keep going, to keep going for that dream, even though it's hard. And also to bring back some of that excitement they had in their youth. Because as kids, like, we have dreams and like they're so huge and we don't think about all these like obstacles. We just want to achieve it. And I feel like as we get older, naturally, with life throwing things at us, we forget that and we forget that fire that we used to have as a kid. And the film kind of serves as a reminder to remember that fire and hold on to it and keep going.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so once it's done with all the festivals, if anybody wants to catch Red Lantern, can they watch it on the YouTube channel?
Yes, so we'll put it on our YouTube channel after that, Noah Films.
Yeah, I'll put a link for Noah Films in the description for this video, as well as I'll put a screenshot somewhere over here. I've checked out a lot of the productions that Noah Films has done so far. It's really great work, considering the fact that they're hardly a team of 2 or 3 working on these productions, but they're very well done. And if anybody wants to check out the work they're doing, or if anybody wants to support up-and-coming Australian artists who are trying to tell authentic Australian stories, do check out the channel. So where do you find yourself personally at the moment? What is next for Sangeetha in the coming years?
Like career-wise?
Career-wise, personally, where do you find yourself in a good spot at the moment compared to the past 6 years since you started off in the industry?
Yeah, I think I am reaching a good point. It's been a journey. There's been ups and downs. And particularly the last couple of years had been quite hard, especially for my family as well.
Sure.
And so I think I'm starting to reach a point where I kind of know what I want to do purposefully, like not even just career-wise, but as a person, like what do I want to do on this planet?
Yep.
And I feel like I'm in a good space there. And particularly this year, even career-wise, things have really started to kick off a little bit. And it looks very promising. So I'm pretty content with where I am now.
Okay. Right. So, one other thing I wanted to ask you was that I'd been watching this explainer on the SAG strikes that are going on in America, right? And that has obviously shaken up the industry. It's resulted in a huge amount of losses for a lot of production houses as well. Resulted in a lot of loss of income for a lot of people associated with the industry. And for the people who, it's not the A-list actors that are being affected really by the strike. It's actually the people who are, just people who rely on the next job for their paycheck, right? So consider being an actor, being a creative within the industry. I'm sure you might know what the nitty-gritties of the issue are over there, what they're fighting for. Do you think that sets a precedence for the Australian industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, they do follow a lot of what America's doing.
Yes.
And so I think I was reading an article the other day just about how now that the strikes are over and they've changed things, maybe Australia is going to start looking at that sort of thing too and change it here as well. Yeah.
So is it like if somebody is like starting off in the industry, other than doing those side hustle jobs to keep yourself afloat, do you think that like somebody who's just getting roles as an extra or just minor background roles, do you think it's enough for somebody to sustain themselves in the industry while looking for better work? Or because the thing with artists is, right, when you're an actor, it's a highly demanding job, physically, emotionally, mentally, right? It drains you.
Yes.
If you have to worry about having a side job, side hustle, it saps a lot of that energy, the energy that you could have otherwise put into writing something new or creating something new, right? Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's hard, but it's kind of something you just have to do. And a lot of people in the industry, even getting into the industry, you kind of know that it's something you're going to have to do. Because with acting and filmmaking, the jobs are on that basis that it's not regular work. You get one job, you get paid casually for it, and then you've got to find the next one.
Yes.
And it is that thing of like, I'm in a place where I could work more full-time in something else to have more income for my film stuff. But as a creative, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So like you said, it's very draining. I only work part-time in something else, but I couldn't do more than that.
Sure.
But again, it's something you just have to do to sustain yourself until you're at that point where you no longer have to do that. Yeah.
So also part of the industry is when people think about like the media industry or the film industry, people just tend to think of actors and directors, right? But it's not just that. Like the industry is massive. Like you've got so many roles that need to be fulfilled in order to create a production. Like you've got DPs and you've got sound engineers, you've got mechanical engineers rigging up the stuff and everything, right? So so my question is then, if somebody is trying to explore a step into that industry, somebody coming from an ethnic background or somebody coming from an immigrant background who lacks those connections, who lacks that connect into the industry, how can somebody just take a step into the industry and just trying to find work for themselves?
So it's a lot of networking. For example, there's a lot of groups on Facebook that are to do with the film industry. And so often they'll post a listing for an assistant or a runner or something like that. And that's often the foot into the industry for crew especially, is just getting onto the sets and getting to know people and doing a good job, and then they'll work with you again.
Sure.
And even working on independent projects, there's a lot of independent film projects that are always looking for crew on different websites and things, and getting onto those sets, and just those sets can be easier because they're not as professional.
Yep.
But it's really just getting onto set and then meeting people and then working your way up. Yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who's trying to make it into the Australian film industry or anything, I think I'll try to post a link of some. I believe Sangeetha and Marshall did a video on some auditioning tips as well, or entering into the industry. I'll post a link for that as well. If anybody is interested, you guys can check that out. Again, Sangeetha, thank you so much for taking the time and coming out. I wish you and Marshall all the best with No Films, everything that you're doing. And personally, from my own self, the work that you guys are doing, especially with Diversity Australia magazine, I wish you all the power in the world with the work that you're doing, because that's something that's close to my heart personally as well. It's kind of like what I'm trying to highlight as well. And I wish to see Diversity Australia up there with Variety. At some point.
Thank you. Yes.
But again, thank you so much for coming on board. Hopefully we can have you guys here again once you're successfully toured some feature film in all of those festivals.
Definitely.
Thanks so much. And for all of you guys watching, if you guys found the conversation interesting, do give it a like, a share. Please take a second out of your time to hit that subscribe button. Also, you can see over here all of our social media platforms. We share all of our short form content there. So the highlights from this conversation are also going to be coming up over there. So give us a follow. Until next time, this has been In The Gap. I've been Hussain, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.